Hey everyone, Dan and here, and we're back with another interview, Business 2.0 with Dan and from Synergy One Lending and Daren Blonsky from Sonoma Wealth Advisors. And today our guest is Jonathan Mahrt from the Petaluma Egg Farm. And Jonathan and his family have been producing eggs in Petaluma for a long time, but I'll kind of let him tell that story. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. And why don't you start off with the background of Petaluma Egg Farm?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. So my grandfather actually immigrated from Germany in the 1950s, sponsored by his uncle who came here in the 1920s and started an egg ranch. So my family has been in the egg business in Petaluma for a really long time. My dad grew up helping my grandfather on the farm, and then my dad, Mahrts are kind of very independent people and don't always work well to get together or with other people. So my dad, after he graduated college, came back to Petaluma and started his own egg business, actually in 1983, originally distributing and marketing my grandfather's eggs along with a couple other local producers until he was able to get to save up to get his own ranch a few years later and start having his own chickens in 1986. And so then we were really the first, one of the first cage-free organic egg producers in California. We started out cage-free. We've always been cage-free. And that's kind of what makes us unique, is that we've been doing it since the very beginning. And then that's kind of brings us to where we're at today. We're still doing it. We have organic eggs, cage free, non-GMO, all kinds of things. We distribute kind of sell our eggs in the greater Northern California, and try and keep things pretty local. You can find us in most of the regular grocery stores and independent places, and also we do some food service as well.
So selling directly to restaurants?
Yes. Correct.
So that business is slowing down, that part of the business?
Yeah, it's basically non-existent right now,
okay.
as you can imagine.
Right.
Jonathan, do you guys sell to grocery stores as well, or is it just?
Yeah, grocery stores. Yeah, so we're in. I mean, at least have some presence. It's bigger than. I mean, we're strongest in independent grocery stores, like. Can you? I think my phone just started ringing. Sorry, I thought I put it in Do Not Disturb. I don't know why.
It happens.
I better just put it into airplane.
Our last interview, the interviewee had to jump up and deal with some kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did have it in Do Not Disturb, but I'm going to put it in airplane mode then, I guess, and see.
It's the nature of the beast these days.
Sorry, guys. There we go.
All good. All good.
Let's try and fix that again.
So you're telling us about kind of where your distribution is happening.
Yeah, give me 1 second to get my camera straightened. Okay, yeah, so distribution. So we are in most major most grocery stores. We're strongest in the independents, like in Oliver's, and then but we're also in Save Mart, Lucky's. We're in Safeway. We're in Whole Foods. So those are kind of the big chains that we're in locally.
Is that all under the Petaluma Egg Farm label, or what does the look like?
So we've had some confusion in the past over our brands. So we're bringing everything. We've always had all these brands, but it's never been clear that they're all together. So we're kind of in the process of letting everyone know that Petaluma Egg Farm means Judy's Family Farm, which is our certified organic eggs. So we've been certified organic since 1996. It actually predates the formation of the National Organic Program. So really one of the, if not the first, one of the first certified organic egg producers in California, if not most of the West Coast. And then we also have Rock Island, which is our cage-free brown fertile egg. Most people don't realize that actually means we have roosters in with our chickens. Which is pretty unusual. There are almost no producers that do that anymore. That was kind of the original egg that my Dad started out producing back in the 80s. Then the other main label we have is Uncle Eddie's, which is our cage-free white, well, non-GMO cage-free white egg, which has been around since about 2001. And then we also have a pastured egg called Petaluma Pastures that is both an organic and conventional, and by conventional we mean non-organic pastured egg. And what's a little bit different about that one is that we actually have mobile buildings, mobile chicken house coops, so they actually get rotated on the pasture. A lot of people call themselves pastured eggs, but all they do is just kind of have a building and they open up the doors, and then the chickens can go outside. And it's really chickens are really hard on the environment and on the pasture, and so eventually it just becomes a big pile of dirt. And so we actually have coops that move and keep the pasture fresh, and the chickens always have access to fresh pasture. Of course, in the middle of summer, everything's yellow, so pasture is a relative term, but still the chicken houses get rotated. So that's kind of, those are the main brands that we have out in the stores under the pet, that are kind of, all those are the brands you're going to see, but they all come from Petaluma Egg Farm.
So what consumers looking at the Brock Island egg versus the pastured egg, is that a whole different demographic, or is it?
I would say so. A pastured, organic pastured egg, especially ours, is a little bit more premium one because there's extra work involved in actually rotating the chicken coop through the pasture. And so you're looking at retails on that. I mean, we don't set the retail, the store does, but just you're looking at like a $9.99 on that egg, whereas a Rock Island is probably like a $3.49 to $3.99. And I would say mostly people are motivated by price when it comes to eggs. So when you see people, they have kind of, if it's cage free, that's great. I feel good about that, but I don't want to spend more than $3 or $4. Organic at $5 or $6, that's too much for me. So I would say the first thing people are motivated is by price. And then there's obviously a few people that don't care. They want, they're looking for certain features. They want it to be organic. They want it to be pastured. They're okay paying $10 for it. But I would say, 70 or 80% of consumers are motivated by price.
So can you tell us kind of what the business looked like before coronavirus, and what your experience was prior to all this happening?
Sure. So the biggest thing for us, as you alluded to already, is that food service has completely gone away. That was a decent chunk of business for us. The only good news in terms of eggs is that most people, regardless of whether they're eating eggs at restaurant or eating eggs at home, they pretty much eat the same amount of eggs. So if they're not eating out, they're generally buying eggs, and if they're not cooking at home, then they're generally buying eggs at restaurants. So we really didn't see a decline in demand. We just saw a shift in demand from, we just saw whatever we've seen diminish in food service has increased in retail. Now that happens to be that we're not, some producers may be very heavily food service, and so that can have a much bigger impact on their business. But for us, we were more heavily retail than food service, so it wasn't such a big deal for us to make that shift. And then the biggest actually issue has been packaging, and that's the whole entire egg industry has been short of retail packaging, because you think about it's not necessarily about the number of eggs available, it's about being able to put the eggs in packaging. Because in food service, most eggs are sold in a 30 egg flat, and that doesn't translate well to grocery stores. So suddenly all these eggs that were being sold on flats, people want to try and put them in, a regular dozen or 18 pack carton, and there's no packaging available. So there's a huge packaging shortage right now in the industry. So for us, I would say the biggest thing has been the shift in demand. The issues, it's a day-to-day thing, us trying to manage packaging. And then we've had a tremendous amount of increased costs in terms of overtime, because we just weren't expecting the demand, and then it's been sustained demand in a really unusual way. So we've been having to work a lot of overtime to try and keep up and meet the demand of customers.
It's interesting because I think we're seeing this across the board in a lot of different industries, is this this shortage of supplies, right?
Mhm.
And the supply chain's really one of the things that's taken a huge hit during this crisis. Uh, can't help but wonder if it doesn't drive us all as a nation to be much more focused on creating supply chains within. And I mean, we're hearing definitely a lot of people talk about more of a turn towards isolationism within different countries because of this.
Well, I think what you're seeing is it's really exposing the flaw in just-in-time manufacturing. Just-in-time manufacturing really counts on the entire supply chain functioning smoothly, and as soon as any piece of the supply chain breaks down, the whole system backs up because no one has inventory on anything anymore. I mean, I used to, just in terms of how we operate our business, you used to be able to go into town and get most of the parts you needed if something broke. Now we have to inventory parts. And so same with packaging, packaging manufacturers used to keep inventory on hand for you and run things ahead and have a floor of things. And so now it's basically everything's built to order. And so as soon as anything happens where there's a run on toilet paper, there isn't any inventory sitting anywhere with a bunch of toilet paper that's just waiting to be distributed. You have to make it all. And so when the whole entire world shuts down all at once, that you start running through inventories on all kinds of random things, and there's no way for anyone to catch back up.
Right, and it takes some time for the supply chain to react to that and to pivot. And so the packaging that you get, where's it made?
It's kind of, actually the good thing for us is that we were actually for just this kind of reason trying to diversify our packaging suppliers. We had been getting most of our packaging from one person. It's made in the United States. We also get a little bit from Canada and Mexico. So all of North America mostly. There are people that get packaging from Europe and South Africa and China and all over the place, but most of ours comes from North America.
I cannot wait for someone to actually do like a sociological study on the whole toilet paper thing. I mean, it's just so random.
Well, I heard a really interesting theory on this the other day that actually toilet paper is super bulky and it takes up a lot of space on the shelf. So anyone that says it doesn't take much for it to look like places are out of toilet paper, and then everyone starts posting about places being out of toilet paper, and then people buy more and more and more. People just, if it's set up for people to just buy it as they need it. So it looks disproportionately bad because, a huge thing of toilet paper takes up a lot of space as opposed to like, I bought 2 more cans of beans than normal, you know? And so then it just creates this cycle and everyone goes out and says, oh, I got to have it.
Yeah, the phenomenon is interesting though. Just that the panic. It will be an interesting study. Just like this, there's no shortage on toilet paper. There's plenty of toilet paper. It's just the supply chain of how long it's going to take to get here, and
right.
But the panic that people are feeling about it and what they're doing is, interesting. It'll be an interesting study of one day to look back and just to see how that social phenomenon happens, and then all of a sudden is what everyone's talking about.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, we saw it on eggs.
We did see it on eggs.
People went crazy. Eggs are a staple a cheap, affordable staple protein. They're a really nutrient dense food. So other than them being perishable, they are a great, thing to have on hand. They're super flexible. You can do a lot with them. But I mean, stores went crazy that first weekend.
Right.
We did all kinds of special drops and everything. I mean, we sold through any inventory we had in a week. And and people went nuts. Stores had to start limiting eggs because there just wasn't enough. People were hoarding too. I mean, I read an article on one guy went and bought all the meat out of the store and then tried to, and other supplies, and then they tried to resell it and they couldn't resell it to people, and then they tried to return it. The store said, no way. Right. So people were there's profiteering. I'm just telling you, if the real end of the world comes, it's going to be bad, guys.
Yeah, for real.
People just go worst common denominator instantly.
Right?
Yeah. So
it's interesting though that there's this psychological link in our culture with eggs and survival, right? Because I had at least a couple people send me pictures throughout this whole ordeal where they're like, Daren, there's no eggs on the shelf, but there's tons of food next to it. But the fact there was no eggs on the shelf, like that was a pivotal moment for people realizing like, wow, this is bad. This could get worse.
That's true. I think that's a really interesting point. And I think it also it also shows you how privileged we are in living in the United States to expect that there's always food on the grocery store shelf. I think people are really disconnected with where their food comes from and how it gets on the shelf, and understanding how the supply chain works and what it takes to produce food. And, you go to other countries, especially poor nations, and having full shelves all the time, 24/7, 365 days a year is not a given. And so with that, something we just assume, I go to the grocery store, there's food there, no issues. Right. And there's a tremendous amount of time, effort, and work that goes into, farmers and grocery stores and distributors and keeping those stores stocked.
So it makes you feel just an incredible amount of empathy and sadness for those people in some of the other countries around the world where they don't have secure supply chain as it is. And then you take a shock like this to their supply chain. I mean, the damage of people who will likely starve around the world because of this thing is going to be significant depending on how long it goes on.
I would think it's entirely possible. I know in the United States, we have plenty of food. It's just about getting it, to the shelf, keeping everyone going, making sure people don't get sick and that whole thing. But it is pretty incredible to see the effect it's had on the world.
Absolutely. So you guys have a plan. You're dealing with farming, right? You have chickens that have to eat, and they have a time period that they're growing before they are able to start producing eggs. So you guys have to project out and what your expectations are for the future and how you manage your flock. So I'm just kind of curious, without giving away any of your family secrets or any proprietary information, like what are you seeing in the future for the business? What are you guys doing to plan for what happens 6, 8, 12 months from now? Can you shed some light on kind of what you're expecting and what you see the industry or maybe the economy locally and regionally doing from what you're doing to address that?
For us, planning in terms of chickens is a 2-year cycle. So if I get chicks tomorrow, if I have to order chicks now and to get eggs 2 years from now. So you can't really, we pretty much produce all the eggs that goes into our packaging pretty much is from our farm. So that's a little bit different. A lot of farms buy eggs out from outside to supplement their supply and then pack those eggs into their cartons to supplement, because it is really hard. Like, demand planning in terms of eggs is really difficult. And and chickens are animals. You can't just say, okay, I have more sales, so now I'm going to run my chicken factory 2 hours longer every day and I'm going to get 20% more eggs out. You get this, no matter what's happening in the world, you get as many eggs as you're going to get. And sometimes, chickens get sick or issues happen, so it's a big part of what farmers have to do, especially with chickens, is trying to plan ahead. So right now, in terms of where we're at, we do the best we can to kind of manage the eggs we have against what's going on. We can't really, in terms of quantity of eggs, we can't really turn on a dime because of the long horizon for planning that is involved. And I think the future is pretty uncertain. I think it depends on how quickly they start releasing lifting this quarantine stuff and people return to daily life. And we're just trying to be conservative right now, keep getting stores and get people as many eggs as we can, and try and plan like life is going to go back mostly to normal in terms of consumption patterns. I don't think we're certainly not making any investment expecting demand to stay at these levels. I think we're planning for things to return at normal some point and just kind of riding the wave out until we get to the other side.
Do you think there's long-lasting social changes? You think we'll eat out less at restaurants, after the fact? Are you predicting any of that stuff, or what's your thought on that?
I do think that people are they're going to rediscover. I think people are rediscovering a love for cooking, and like I mean, obviously this has a different effects on everyone, but I see and hear plenty of people talking about, and you see it in the stores too. We have a little store in town called Skippy's Egg Store, where we sell not just our eggs, but also a lot of any kind of things, food service stuff. So anything a restaurant we need, we sell there. Milk, cheese, butter, flour, yeast, anything for baking and cooking is selling like crazy right now. I think everyone's baking, everyone's cooking, people learning how to make bread, all kinds of things. So I think you're going to see some level of sustained interest in cooking at home in some capacity. I think that's going to change. But also, eating out at restaurants tends to be very cyclical. When the economy is good, people eat out more. When the economy is bad, people eat out less. And I mean, I think so. It really just depends. I think it mostly depends on which direction the economy goes as well. I think people will return. Restaurants will go out of business. They won't come back. Some won't come back just because they don't have enough working capital lots of times to survive these kinds of things. We're probably going to end up losing. There were restaurants that we may just never get paid because they're not going to come back for this, and so we'll just have to eat whatever they owe
they're on
us.
terms.
Yeah, most of them are on terms. So I think eventually people kind of mostly go back to normal, but maybe a little extra, maybe people cook more at home still.
Right. So wrapping up here, the one thing we had texted about this yesterday. So Petaluma Egg Farm is also a big sponsor of Butter and Egg Days, the annual parade in Petaluma, which was supposed to happen this past weekend and has been postponed or canceled. I'm not sure if they're still trying to pick a date for it or what they're doing, but you guys sponsor the cutest little chick competition every year. Tell us about that, your community involvement in that, and kind of what your plans are for that competition and having fun with that moving forward.
Yeah, so we have been participating in the parade since the Butter and Egg Day parade came back to life in the 80s. And then I think the year after the parade started, my dad started doing the Cutest Little Chick in Town contest. So we created and have been hosting that contest for 36 years, somewhere in there. Wow. And obviously we were getting ready to do it this year. We are teaming up with the Argus Courier, Petaluma 360, to do kind of an online contest this year, which you will see within the next week. Cool. Where people will be able to submit entries online. We're kind of working out the mechanics and getting all that stuff hammered out in the next couple of days. But
I have two little girls that are shoe-in winners. Absolutely, there's no competition.
Not biased.
Madeline and Matilda are definitely will be entering.
I believe it. I believe it. Yeah. So it should be fun. And then I heard they're still trying to do the parade in August. I don't know. I think a lot of things are uncertain. I don't know if they're going to be able to find a date or make it happen. But if the parade does happen, we will also still do the contest then as well.
It's a great event, and it's really spectacular that you guys are so involved in the community. So let's wrap up here. So Jonathan, any last thoughts, anything you want to tell us or our audience about what you're thinking about with this coronavirus, or just kind of parting thoughts for everyone?
I think it's just, this shows why having local food companies is so important. And, I just want to say thank you to all of our employees who have been working super hard to keep food on the shelves for people. We couldn't do it without them. And people have been putting in a lot of hard hours to, make sure that people have food to eat. So, and thank you to everyone that's buying our eggs.
Right on.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks for taking the time to speak with us today. We know you guys are slammed right now, and thanks for feeding the North Bay and taking care of all of us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jonathan. Talk to you soon.
All right. Have a good one.